Hey everyone, it's Mark. This is my recap for Pokémon Horizons episode 40. Farewell, Sprigatito. This was the 1272nd episode of the Pokemon anime, and I'm glad to be back to my regular schedule of weekly reviews, especially after I got this endorsement.
There's also lots of other talented and amazing Pokemon content creators who still cover Horizons on a weekly basis. Just because I don't do them anymore doesn't mean you should give up on the series, because there's other people who have a lot more awesome content out there as well and have their own thoughts that are different from mine, and I feel like they're definitely worth checking out, so be sure to do so.
Big thanks to Lumiose trainer Zach, or should I say Zactoshi, for the shout out, and now I guess I better try and uphold that reputation by giving you guys a good review this week. Now, my most recent video was a 30-minute long special when I looked at Pokemon Horizons from a broader perspective. Be sure to check that one out if you haven't already, and I made note of the similar yet different intros they've been using in each episode recently, and this time around we got the 40-second intro, but it always kind of feels random to me whichever one they pick. The Rising Voltaclers are still in the same place as last episode, right outside of Tetsuran Town, with most of the crew working on patching up the Brave Olivine after the damage Orthworm did. We catch a glimpse of a lot of the crew at the start of this episode, including Dot, who is still getting used to her easily excited Tinkatink that she just caught in the last episode. It looks like they're going off to buy some more iron for Tinkatink to play with, which of course brings Murdoch to tears. Back on the deck of the airship, Sprigatito is getting ready for nap time, only to be distracted by Liko trying to drown Hatena and Terapagos. Okay, she's actually just bathing them, which look like a lot of fun, and she asks if Sprigatito wants to join them, but what cat ever says yes to a bath? Instead, Sprigatito walks over to the other side of the airship for some peace and quiet, only to be surprised by what she sees in the distance above the tree line. We don't really know what it is, just some house with an interesting architectural design. It almost looks like the roof has cat ears, and just the sight of this place gets a huge response out of Sprigatito. Now that bath time is done, Roy challenges Liko to a battle, and we immediately jump over to the wing deck as the action gets underway. It's a little disappointing to see these two only ever battle with their starters. How childish of them. I mean, we even see Liko's other Pokemon sitting on the sidelines. It just makes me wish we could have seen a Hatena versus Wattrel battle or something like that. Instead, these two familiar foes are kind of at a stalemate, but the action is exciting enough that Terapagos wants to get a closer look. Just another example of our little turtle friend not knowing basic social norms, like you really shouldn't try walking into the middle of a battle. That's exactly what happens though, and this leaves them right in the firing line after Fuecoco dodges one of Sprigatito's Leafage attacks. Liko steps in front of her Pokemon to protect them, and the attack is strong enough to knock her over, and she lands pretty badly on her left wrist. Everyone else is concerned that Liko got hurt, but she tries to calm them down even though you can already see a bruise forming on her wrist. They go off to have Molly take a look at it, although Sprigatito was pretty sad about hurting her trainer. Molly's diagnosis is that Liko sprained her wrist. Not really a big deal if you ask me, but Sprigatito doesn't like seeing Liko in pain, and she walks off looking distraught. She even leaves the airship, walking in the direction of that house we saw earlier, and thankfully Lolo was paying attention, so at least someone knows where Sprigatito went. We follow everyone's favorite grass cat into the forest, where she quickly finds herself at the entrance to the building with the cat ears, and since the gate is open, Sprigatito just walks in, although the person who lives in this house does notice her arrival. Back aboard the Brave Olivine, Ludlow tells Liko where her Pokemon went, and she decides to go after her. Liko asks Hatena to stay behind and watch Terapagos, and I love these two so much. They make a point to show Liko being like, alright Hatena, I'm counting on you. And my favorite little hat-shaped pink blob flexes her appendages to kind of say, I got this, only to then return to her cute dopey smile, and then literally 1 second later she turns to her right and Terapagos is already missing. Oh no, what are we gonna do? Liko arrives at the mysterious house and decides to walk through the gate to investigate. Why did I write the script like that? Gate? Investigate? Alright, whatever. And she pretty quickly finds Sprigatito. Well, she finds a Sprigatito, but clearly not her Sprigatito, and it looks like a bunch of these little ones all live here. Liko is even more surprised when the owner of the place is right behind her, and our hero immediately apologizes for trespassing and tries to introduce herself when this woman cuts her off and is like, oh, you must be Liko from the Indigo Academy. They sit down to have a chat, and the lady introduces herself as Manya, and apparently she's a breeder who specializes in feline Pokemon. I know I wasn't the only one shocked to see Sneasel included in this mix. I mean, Sneasel and Weavile look and sound more like weasels than they do cats, but apparently they do have some ties to black cats as well. Anyways, this crazy cat lady is starting to freak Liko out a little bit, so she asks how Manya knew who she was. The Pokemon breeder explains that she never forgets the Pokemon she sends out into the world, and the trainers who become their partners. Liko puts two and two together and realizes that Sprigatito must have grown up here, which Manya confirms. She continues by explaining that she's worked with the Indigo Academy before, but she remembers the story of Liko and her Sprigatito quite well. Apparently, Liko's Sprigatito was pretty unique, and she didn't always get along well with the others. Manya confirms that she saw Sprigatito here earlier, and and Liko admits that Sprigatito kind of ran away from her. Marnia is sad to hear this because apparently it's happened before that some Pokemon just don't get along well with their trainers, so they'll abandon them and run back here. This shocks Liko, who can't fathom the idea that Sprigatito wouldn't want to be her partner anymore, and this kind of reminded me of how Ash's Greninja used to run away from its former trainers back as a Froakie. Liko Meowscarada confirmed? Liko can't accept the idea that Sprigatito would run away from her, so she goes off to search for her starter Pokemon. I like the self-doubt Liko had in this moment. I mean, we're used to it now, but I do want to point out the fact that we actually get to hear Liko's internal thoughts. It feels really natural, and it makes it easier for us to connect with her. Liko does correctly guess that Sprigatito is on the roof, and she immediately calls out to Sprigatito, who quickly notices the brace that Liko is wearing, but she plays it off like it's no big deal. Sprigatito won't listen though, and just starts walking away. Liko isn't going to take no for an answer, and she keeps following Sprigatito and pretending that everything is okay, which was pretty funny. While this is going on, we see some familiar Pokemon have also wandered off to this place. Liko eventually catches up to Sprigatito and just grabs her, although Sprigatito is not happy. She actually just scratches Liko and runs away again, so obviously Liko is distraught. Marnia invites her inside for some tea, and it's story time. We enter flashback mode as Marnia describes what Sprigatito was like back in the day, and she started off just wanting to be left alone. One day though, Sprigatito had to use Leaf Edge to save one of the others, and apparently this was an amazingly powerful Leaf Edge. So not only did this get her the respect of the others, but it was also pretty clear that Sprigatito was abnormally strong. Liko takes note of this, flashing back to episode 2 when Sprigatito unleashed this crazy strong Leaf Edge out of Methio, and yeah, I was still kind of wondering what was up with that. This newly discovered strength made Sprigatito pretty popular, and I loved how Liko can't hold back her happiness for Sprigatito. Even in the middle of this day-long fight the two of them are having, Liko can't help but celebrate her Pokemon's accomplishments. Back to flashback mode, and one day a wild Spidops snuck in and started trapping Sprigatito's friends. She fired a Leaf Edge attack at this villainous spider, only for the Leaf Edge to be so powerful that it sent Sprigatito's friends crashing into the tree, injuring all of them. Yeah, this is all starting to sound familiar now. This incident caused Sprigatito's friends to reject her, and this made such an impact that Sprigatito stopped using Leaf Edge after that. This unlocks another memory in Liko's brain as she remembers how Sprigatito struggled to use Leaf Edge back when they first met, and this story explains why. It also explains why Sprigatito had such a big reaction to injuring Liko earlier, because I guess Sprigatito just assumed the same thing would happen again. Marnia cuts Liko off and brings up the interview Liko did with some starter Pokemon before going to Indigo Academy, and we flash back to the scenes we saw in episode 1. Liko Sprigatito was one of the Pokemon involved in that interview, and Marnia was there alongside some of the other Pokemon breeders. Just from watching on, Marnia was convinced that Liko and Sprigatito were meant to be partners, and we exit flashback mode as she wraps up her story. It looks like Sprigatito has found her way back over to that Oranberry Grove from the story about the Spidops, and Liko manages to catch up with her there. Sprigatito tries running away again, but Liko isn't going to let that happen. She follows up with a devastating tickle that immobilizes her opponent, only for Sprigatito to ready her claws for another scratch attack. Liko remains calm though and starts reminiscing on all of their past experiences together, emphasis on together and how happy this has made her. Liko continues laying it on thick, and Sprigatito finally has a change of heart. I especially liked how instead of pushing against Liko's face like she's done many times before, Sprigatito just gives her trainer a friendly boop, and then the two of them embrace. This touching moment is immediately interrupted by what sounds like Hatena screaming in the distance, and they run further into the grove and find their friends. Just as everyone is reunited though, what's that? Team Rocket swoops in and steals the Pokemon. Okay, that's not actually what happens. Of course, it's another Spidops, but I do miss Team Rocket trying to steal our hero's Pokemon all the time. Instead, we just get this symbolic moment that is almost exactly like what happened to Sprigatito back in the day, and she's hesitant to use Leaf Edge at first, but Liko reassures her. Liko actually calls for Leaf Edge, but something looks different about this attack. Instead of being a wild flurry of leaves, this attack has more of an arc to it, and it blasts Spidops away while severing the threads that had Hatena and Terapagos all tied up. They fall into a bush which looked really crisp for some reason. Shout out to whoever drew that bush. As Liko and Sprigatito celebrate their victory, and Marnia confirms that Sprigatito just learned a new move, Magical Leaf. The celebration continues as Sprigatito's friends join in on the affection, and I'm kind of only realizing that this was the first time we've seen Terapagos out in the wild, but thankfully Marnia just doesn't question what is going on with this mysterious Pokemon. The episode ends back aboard the Brave Olivine as our two main protagonists are going to finish their battle from earlier. Liko pretty quickly ends up using their new move, and remember that the additional effect of Magical Leaf is that it has perfect accuracy, so Fuecoco can't dodge this one. One hit is all it takes to win this fight, and the rest of the Rising Voltaglers are very impressed, including Dot, who even came out to watch this with her own two eyes. Our closing shot is a big leaping high five between Liko and Sprigatito, with their bond now closer than ever. Well, that was a pretty good episode, although it wasn't exactly groundbreaking or anything. We have seen plenty of similar episodes in the past. It's not exactly a novel concept to dedicate an episode to one of our main characters nearly going their separate ways with the starter Pokemon. What probably sets this one apart for me was how it all tied back into what we already knew about Liko and Sprigatito. For example, I thought that crazy leafage from episode 2 was just going to be an unexplained one-off thing that we never got any explanation for, but this episode tied up that loose end. I have also questioned the method in which students get their starter Pokemon at the Indigo Academy, and this episode shed some light on that as well. They even explained why Sprigatito didn't really use leafage at the beginning of the series, so really this episode did a great job at connecting so many different plot points together in a really satisfying way. Well, in a mostly satisfying way, because I definitely have some nitpicks. First of all, and this is kind of low-hanging fruit, but how convenient was it that the Rising Voltaglers just so happened to be right by the place where Sprigatito grew up? And what are the odds that Sprigatito would hurt one of her friends just like back in the day? And what are the odds that another Spidops would come by and trap Sprigatito's friends again? This many coincidences always takes me out of the episode and makes things feel so contrived. And while I'm nitpicking, I am also slightly underwhelmed at Sprigatito's backstory. Like, it's been kind of obvious from the start of Pokemon Horizons that Liko Sprigatito was kind of stronger than normal, and the reason we got for this was, well, Sprigatito was just stronger than normal. Yeah, like I said earlier, not exactly groundbreaking stuff. Now, it may be too early to judge, like it's definitely possible that we'll find out more about Sprigatito one day. I joked about Liko Meowscarada being a thing earlier, and putting aside the joking element of that for a second, we got tons of backstory and exposition about why Ash's Greninja was as strong as it was, and I can only hope that Liko Sprigatito will get some kind of character development like that. Otherwise, we're just stuck with the explanation that, I don't know, Sprigatito just had really good IVs or something. Just to reiterate though, these are all nitpicks I had with this episode. They're small issues, not massive ones. Overall, I really liked what we saw, so I'm giving this episode a 7 out of 10 rating. There's a reason why they reuse this storyline so much. It's a good way to flesh out the relationship between trainer and Pokemon, especially with these struggles leading to them developing an even closer bond. To finish discussing this episode, there were two other things that didn't really impact my rating at all, beginning with Sprigatito learning Magical Leaf. I guess a lot of people really wanted Sprigatito to learn a new move, and some people were getting annoyed that it still only knew Leafage as its only grass-type attack, but I don't know, this just never bothered me. While learning a new move is cool, this wasn't like some big relief for me that finally Sprigatito learned a new move, but I guess I wanted to acknowledge that there are plenty of people out there who did think that way. The other discussion point I wanted to mention was the fact that we get to see all of Liko, Roy, and Dot's Pokemon now. Well, almost all of them, because the writers must have just, forgotten Roy's Wattrel existed or something. I don't really feel like we need to see Wattrel in every episode. I mean, we don't see Hatena in every episode, but it is a little strange that Wattrel almost never shows up compared to some of these other Pokemon. So yeah, justice for Wattrel. And with that, we can move on to the preview for the next episode. We've known this whole time that Dot's uncle is Murdoch, but I've always been curious about the rest of her family. Well, it looks like Dot's mother is showing up out of the blue in the next episode, and it looks like she has a very different personality than her daughter. Seems like this episode will involve a battle between Dot and her mother, and it seems pretty likely that this is just going to end with Dot earning her mother's respect. I look forward to watching and reviewing this episode next week. Oh wait, Pokemon Horizons is taking a 1-week break, and this episode is actually airing on March 1st. Oh well, I'm still looking forward to reviewing this episode whenever it comes out, especially now that my reviews have received an official endorsement from one of the biggest Pokemon anime YouTubers. And wait, I don't remember the part in Zach's video when he said I was better than Niall at Fantasy Premier League. I mean, it is true though, I am absolutely dominating Niall in Fantasy Premier League. I have been all season, and that's not going to stop anytime soon. So if that doesn't make me the best Pokemon anime episode reviewer in the world, I don't know what does. Okay, thank you all so much for watching this video. Be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you guys next time.